Her stepfather yanked her by the hair and flung her hard against the floorboards. Clara Hayes was only 22. Her beauty had become a curse she never asked for. Martin Doyle, her mother's second husband, was a man decayed from the inside out. He had gambled away what little he owned and drowned the rest in whiskey. By midday, debt collectors were already crowding outside their weather-worn cabin at the edge of Redwood County. Martin dragged Clara into the blistering Sunday. His bloodshot eyes burned with rage and disgrace. "Pay them back," he snarled. Clara froze in disbelief. Her own stepfather was ordering her to give herself to the men who came to collect his debts. She shook her head, voice trembling. "No, I won't." That single refusal struck him like a knife. The men burst into cruel laughter. Martin's pride shattered. He hurled the half-empty bottle against the wall, glass exploding into shards. He staggered forward and slapped Clara so viciously that she toppled to the ground. She tried to crawl away, but his boot drove into her ribs, knocking the air from her lungs. The debt collectors lingered, smirking at her torment. Martin's drunken fury boiled hotter. "You dare defy me," he growled. He seized her by the arm, dragging her across the yard. Clara's dress was ripped at the seams from the struggle. Red welts marked her cheeks, and bruises spread across her arms. She cried out, begging, but mercy had long fled from him. The men jeered as Martin shoved her toward the riverbank near the wheat fields. The midday sun glared cruelly on her pale skin, making each wound more raw. Clara sobbed, legs buckling. She tried once more, voice cracking. "Please, I'm begging you." But her words only deepened his shame. With a grunt, Martin lifted her and hurled her into the rushing water. The river swallowed her whole. Her lungs filled with icy flood. She clawed at the surface, but the current dragged her down. Her torn dress twisted around her limbs like shackles. Her strength ebbed fast, the world dimming, the men's laughter fading into muffled echoes above. Was this how it would end, drowned as nothing but her stepfather's victim? Just as the darkness threatened to consume her, a figure appeared on the riverbank. A horse whinnied. Heavy boots pounded the earth. A man charged into the water without hesitation. His arms caught Clara's, pulling her back to life. Her body sagged, limp but alive. He carried her to the grassy bank, laying her gently down. Clara coughed, water gurgling from her chest. Bruises marred her skin. Her lips trembled as though to form words, but none would come. The man stared at her in shock. This was Samuel Whitaker, a seasoned rancher in his late 30s. His eyes widened at the sight of her battered form. What kind of beast could do this to his own daughter? And what fate would await Clara now, with her stepfather and his collector still circling nearby? Could Samuel protect her from the storm that had only just begun? Clara coughed and gasped as Samuel lifted her into his arms. Her body shook violently from the chill of the river. Her torn dress clung to her skin, heavy with water. Without a moment's hesitation, he placed her onto his horse and galloped hard toward his ranch. The weathered outline of his old homestead came into view. Samuel carried Clara inside and laid her gently on a bed near the crackling fireplace. He wrapped her in a thick wool blanket, but her body continued to shiver. When he touched her brow, his worry deepened. She was burning with fever. Her lips moved as though to speak, but no sound came. Samuel fetched a shirt from the wooden chest. It was one of his old work shirts, faded but clean. He placed it in her hands. "You need this more than I do." Clara hesitated, but slipped into it. The shirt was far too large, the sleeves swallowing her hands. Yet for the first time in years she felt a faint trace of safety. She drew the fabric close around her body. The fire popped softly in the silence. Samuel sat beside her, patient. Clara stared into the flames with hollow eyes. Then, slowly, tears slid down her cheeks. Her whisper broke the stillness. "It wasn't the first time," she said, her voice quaking. "For years. He beat me. For years. I prayed he would stop." Samuel's fist tightened at his sides, but he held his tongue. Clara brushed her tears with the long sleeve of his shirt. "And today, He wanted me to pay his debts, to serve those men. I said no. I fought back. That's when he beat me worse than ever. And then he threw me into the river, like I was nothing. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. Samuel's jaw locked. The thought of Martin Doyle forcing her into such degradation turned his stomach. But Clara was not finished. Her voice cracked. Sometimes I thought I deserved it. That maybe I was cursed, that my life had no meaning. But when you pulled me out, I felt, for the first time, like maybe God hadn't forgotten me. Samuel leaned closer. His rough, calloused hand rested gently on hers. His voice was steady, warm. You didn't deserve a single bit of it. Not one. The kindness in his tone broke through her defenses. Clara wept harder. Yet for the first time she let herself believe she was not alone. But outside the ranch the world kept turning, and men like Martin Doyle never forgot. The first light of dawn spilled over the fields. Clara sat by the window, wrapped in Samuel's shirt, her gaze distant as she stared across the land. For the first time in years, she felt safe. But the safety was fragile like glass that could shatter with the slightest touch. Samuel brought her a cup of steaming tea. She offered him a soft, grateful smile, though her eyes still carried a storm. Then, the sound of hooves shattered the quiet. A dark figure appeared at the gate. Martin Doyle. He rode his weary horse straight into the yard, dismounting with the swagger of a man who still thought the world owed him everything. "Where is she?" he barked. Clara froze by the window, her face draining of color. Samuel stepped into the doorway, tall and steady as stone. "She's not yours anymore." Martin let out a hollow laugh that reeked of whiskey even from a distance. "You think you can keep her from me? She is mine. She always will be." From inside, Clara shook her head. Her voice trembled, but carried a spark of strength. "No, not anymore." Samuel crossed his arms. "You best ride on before I lose my patience." For a heartbeat, it looked as if Martin might lunge forward. But even in his drunken haze, he knew Samuel was not a man to trifle with. He spat on the dirt, cursed under his breath, and hauled himself back onto the saddle. As he rode off, Samuel turned back to Clara. "This is not over. He'll come again, and worse, he'll bring others." Clara clutched the sleeves of Samuel's shirt tighter. "What can we do?" Samuel thought long, then said, "There is one man who can help Sheriff Lawson. Later that day, Samuel saddled up and rode into town. Sheriff Lawson was an older man with a sharp gaze, one who had seen the ugliest side of the frontier yet still carried himself with honor. Samuel told him everything, the abuse, the debts, how Clara had nearly drowned in the river. The sheriff listened in silence, then gave a firm nod. "Bring her under my protection. If Martin Doyle shows his face again, he'll answer to the law." Samuel rode back to the ranch with a flicker of hope. But he knew the truth. Men like Doyle never gave up easy. They always came back. And when they did, there would be a reckoning. Night settled over the ranch. Clara sat near the fire, hands wrapped tight around a cup of tea. Samuel paced the floor, restless. He had seen the look in Doyle's eyes, the look of a gambler who had lost everything and now craved revenge. Suddenly, the sound of hooves split the silence. Dogs barked furiously outside. Clara's cup slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Samuel grabbed his rifle and stepped out onto the porch. Torches lit the night. A dozen men crowded the yard. At the front sat Martin Doyle, grinning crookedly. Beside him was the debt collector, a tall brute with a scar carved down his cheek. Behind them, armed thugs shifted restlessly, eager for violence. "Bring her out, now." Martin's voice was sharp as a whip. Samuel planted his boots in the dirt. "You're not taking her." "And," the scar-faced man sneered, "Old man, you can't fight us all." Then the gang surged forward. Samuel fired into the air. The crack of the rifle echoed across the valley. For a moment they faltered, but only a moment. The mob closed in. Samuel swung his rifle like a club, dropping one man to the ground. Another rushed with a knife. They collided, fists and boots tearing up the dirt. From the doorway, Clara screamed. Two men seized her by the arms, dragging her out. She fought like a wildcat, kicking, clawing, until one struck her across the face. Samuel broke free, lunging toward her, but three more piled onto his back. He struggled, striking hard, but their weight drove him down. His brow split open, blood soaking into the dust. Martin loomed over him, laughing. "You're finished, Whitaker. Should have kept your nose out." "No," Clara cried, fighting to reach him, but one of the thugs shoved her down, pressing her face into the dirt. The scar-faced collector yanked her by the hair, snarling in her ear. All seemed lost. And then from the distance came the thunder of hooves. Shouts rang out, slicing through the night. "Sheriff Lawson, put down your weapons." Lanterns swung as a line of riders closed in around the yard. The sheriff sat tall in his saddle, revolver steady in hand. His deputies fanned out, rifles trained on Doyle's gang for the first time that night. Martin Doyle's grin faltered. The tables had turned, but had the sheriff arrived in time to save Clara and Samuel from the final blow? The yard froze in tense silence. Sheriff Lawson's voice cut through it, sharp as iron. "Drop your weapons. Now." The men hesitated. One of the deputies fired a warning shot into the sky. The crack rang out across the valley. That was enough. Knives clattered, pistols dropped. The gang stepped back, hands raised high. Martin's face twisted between rage and fear. For years he had ruled Clara through terror. Now he stood powerless, cornered by the law, stripped bare for what he truly was. The sheriff gave a curt nod. "Take them in." Within moments, Martin Doyle and the scarred debt collector were bound tight with rope, shoved onto their horses, and hauled toward town. The torches faded into the distance, leaving only the crackle of fire and the ragged breathing of Samuel and Clara. Samuel staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his brow. Clara rushed into his arms, clutching him with trembling hands. For the first time she felt safe, not only in body but in spirit. Tears streamed down her face, but now they were tears of release. Samuel held her close. "It's over. He'll never lay a hand on you again." She buried her face against his chest, and in that embrace, the long years of pain finally began to loosen their grip. Sheriff Lawson tipped his hat. "You've been through enough. Rest easy. Justice will do the rest." Then he turned his horse and rode into the night, leaving the ranch in peace once more. The dawn broke soft and golden the next morning. Clara stood on the porch, still wrapped in Samuel's old shirt, staring out across the wide open fields. The horizon stretched endless like a promise of new life. Samuel stepped beside her, his weathered hand brushing hers. Their eyes met, no longer as rescuer and victim, but as two souls finding hope amid the ashes of suffering. And what lesson do we carry from their story? That even in the darkest valley, a hand can reach down to pull us back into the light. That no matter how broken the past, a future can still rise strong, free, and filled with love. So let me ask you, what would you do if you saw someone like Clara broken, yet still fighting to live? Would you turn away, or would you be the one to pull her from the river? If this story has touched you, give it a like and subscribe so you won't miss the journeys yet to come. Because in the wild frontier and in life itself, the battles never truly end.